Welcome to the Boxing Show. Today we're talking about heavyweights. We're talking about the biggest and baddest men on the planet. And we're talking about the heavyweight rankings for January 2018. So if you like what you hear, please consider hitting that thumbs up button. Also consider subscribing for more content like this. There will be a companion show to this where we're talking about the best fighters of 2017 for all across the weight classes. Now, if you've got any comments about the rankings that we've got here for the heavyweight scene in 2018, please jump down to the comments section. Let me know what your rankings would have been. Is there anyone in the rankings you're not too happy about, and are you unhappy about the omission of some of the names? Just jump down to that comment section. It will be great to hear from you. So, January 2018, the heavyweight scene and the rankings. Now, it's not quite 2018. I'm recording this just the week before Christmas. There are no heavyweight fights left of any note, and there are actually no fights of any note in the heavyweight scene scheduled for 2018. So it's a good enough time as any to actually sit back and consider where we are going into 2018 and looking forward, okay, and deciding who this top 10 will be. Now, the heavyweight scene in 2017, definitely not a vintage year for a number of reasons. I mean, there are a lot of reasons, or a lot of things we can say as to why it wasn't a vintage year. I mean, probably at the top of that list, Tyson Fury, constantly a shadow over the division. Is he going to come back? He's announcing his comeback, then he's not. There's all this talks of the drugs test. Is he going to get cleared? Did he get cleared? He didn't. He kind of accepted something and he didn't. We don't quite know. It's a grey area. He didn't step into the ring, and I think that was a big reason why 2017 wasn't a vintage year. But we also saw the retirement of the great Vladimir Klitschko. The great Vladimir Klitschko fought for the last time, and he bowed out. We saw a lack of real big fights. We didn't see a lot of great fighters fighting each other. We saw prospects lose. We saw fighters get injured in and out of the ring. We saw fighters taking extended time off. We also saw pedestrian comebacks by some of the fighters that have come back. We saw a lot of mismatches, too many, okay? We saw prospects not getting opportunities, okay, even if they wanted them. And we also saw a lot of prospects clearly too afraid to take risks, okay. And more than anything, we saw a number of the gatekeepers, the guys that are probably top 15 ranked by the organising bodies, starting to fade away, and this has really watered down the division. And for me, this is I think this is about the fourth rankings that I've done here on the channel, and this has been the most difficult because for me there was a real lack of top talent to pull together to create a respectable ranking. In the past I've done 20s and 30s. Today I've decided I'm just going to concentrate on a top 10 because it is that difficult. Because for me, I believe that we've got about 8 semi-elite fighters, and then we've got a handful of quite good fighters, just a handful, and then we've got about 50 or 60 that are all much of a muchness, and it's what you like, what you prefer. A mixture of faded guys, people treading water, and young prospects that might be decent in a year's time, or they might not. So it's very, very difficult this year more than anything. So we've got this top 10, and I've kind of tried to put together a respectable top 10, and I've kind of combined the talent with what they've done in the last year, along with their experience. So a kind of more general overview than possibly what I have done in the past. So let's move into this top 10 and just have a bit of discussion about all of these guys, what they've done this year. Now, in the top, the 10th place, I'm going with Dominic Brazil. Now, he's not a fashionable fighter. He's not a highly skilled fighter. But he has stopped 2 opponents in 2017. Now, a year ago, if you'd asked me about Dominic Brazil, I would have said that his career's basically over before it's even begun. The defeat that he had against Joshua was it was a beatdown, and it was one of those ones where you think, can they really recover from that? Can they really recover from that? And I always had this problem with Dominic Brazil in the fact that despite his dimensions, he lacks the movement and the speed, so that he can never really be in range of his opponent from an offensive perspective. But he gets tagged a lot, which is a really weird dynamic. But despite that, he's gone through and fought Ogono and Molina. Now, most people predicted that he would lose the Ogono fight. A lot of people had really high hopes for that guy, and they thought that he was going to run through him. But what they didn't expect was that Dominic Brazil is a tough SOB, one of the toughest in the division. And I mean, he would be tough for anyone, because he's just a tough guy, and he will take a beating, which is worrying. Is worrying as a fight fan, because you know these guys, if they take a beating, it can lead to some serious injury. We don't really want to see that. But he did that fight. He then took out Molina, which I kind of expected him to do. Because of that, he just edges into this top 10. But the fact that he's in that top 10 shows you the kind of weaknesses that we have in the division at the moment. What I discussed just before I hit the rankings, okay? The next one is Jennings. Now, Jennings, he's one of these guys I spoke about that has had a very pedestrian comeback. He's someone I think is one of the most underrated guys in the heavyweight division. It has been for a long time. Now, he suffered 2 defeats, Klitschko and Ortiz, a couple of years ago, and then took the time out. Now, they're not embarrassing defeats. They were against top level fighters at the time, okay? And he gave as good as he got, I thought. I mean, he didn't embarrass himself. He lost, but he put up a very, very good show in those fights. He's come back and he's had 2 very low level victories, both by stoppage. You can't really read much into it, but I believe that he has the skills to be a good contender for a lot of these guys. And I think he would put up a good fight against most of the people in this top 10. Okay, can he beat them? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, we have to see what he has got. I mean, based on these 2 low-level wins, you can't read much into it. But he's been talked about as a potential opponent for Joseph Parker. I don't think that will happen. I think there's other opponents in front of Jennings in terms of Joseph Parker. But there's some okay fights potential. And I think because of what he has done in the past, I think some of these more higher level guys will see it as a decent fight. So we next move on to Luis Ortiz. Now, Luis Ortiz, for me, if the division was more stacked, I would like to take him out of the top 10. And the reason why is real lack of opposition. This is a guy who's 28-0. I think he's stopped most of his opposition. He's highly respected, highly regarded by a lot of fight fans out there. But he has not had the fights. He beat Jennings, who we just spoke about a couple of years ago, in a very good fight. But you watched that fight. It was not one-sided. He won by knockout, stoppage. But Jennings won some of those rounds. Ortiz took rounds off. He struggled. I mean, I think that he's got a stamina issue. There's always the jokes about how old he is. No one really knows. But for me, he's in there because of the potential, what he can do. In glimpses, he's shown phenomenal skills, great power. But he just hasn't shown it against high-level opposition. There was talk about him potentially fighting Anthony Joshua. I mean, he's failed more drugs tests than I've had hot dinners. So God knows if we'll see him again. He had one fight in 2017 against a very low-level opposition, which was a relatively easy stoppage. So I'm putting him in, and it could be the last time he's in the rankings. If we don't see him do anything in 2018, I will take him out of the rankings if we don't see him against a credible or semi-credible opponent in the first 6 months of 2018. So we now moved up to 7th. And for me, 6th and 7th, the next two guys, interchangeable. I mean, you could go one or the other, but the way that I've put it, I think the other guy's opponents in 2017 slightly better. So I've gone with Dillian Whyte. Okay. Now he's got a 22-1. That one defeat coming in the hands of Anthony Joshua, so that's no disgrace. And he did land that one punch. Everyone will remember that one punch, okay? And he got under the skin. Of Anthony Joshua as well. But he's had 2 victories in 2017, one of which was against Robert Helenius. And it was a very one-sided fight, a very credible victory. And in the past, some of my problems I've had with Whyte were that he takes risks. He wants to be in a war. He's probably skillful enough to be able to box and not take shots. He likes to get in close too much for my liking. And because of that, I think people will be able to take him out. I think there's probably better opponents that he'll struggle against, okay? But he's in there. I mean, a lot of people would say he probably doesn't deserve to be in the top 10, but as I've said, we're really lacking this year. So he's in there. He's been talked as an opponent for all of the top guys. He's ranked, I think, by all of the bodies. He's called out everyone and his mother. So he's there. I think he's on the periphery. And I think probably because he hasn't been exciting enough inside the ring is why some of the bigger guys just don't want him. He's not bringing enough money to the table. I think he would in an Anthony Joshua fight because there's the story there. There's the previous fight. There's all that can be manufactured to really sell the pay-per-view. But with the others, probably not. I mean, you're talking about Deontay Wilder versus Dillian Whyte. I don't think there's going to be any excitement about that, unfortunately, which is why he's probably getting put to the side. Now there's a similar sort of situation with the next guy, and the next guy is Jarrell Miller. Now Jarrell Miller had a good 2017, one of the best years of any of the fighters going really in the top 20 or 30, in fact. Okay, and he had 2 impressive victories over Gerald Washington and Marius Wack. I mean, 2 credible opponents. Washington recently had a title challenge against Deontay Wilder where he was stopped. Marius Wack, we know, has been, very limited in his skill set, but he has the size and he has the experience. And he's only really fallen short against high-level opposition. So 2 very, very good wins where he was dominant in both. He showed amazing strength and an ability to push his opponent back. Even when some people would say that his opponents were possibly more skillful from a boxing perspective. and he really did impress. He's on the periphery of these titles, but again, not possibly bringing the fan base and the money to really get these shots against the top guys. Is Anthony Joshua, Joseph Parker, are these guys really good? Are they going to want the risk-reward ratio for fighting someone like Jarrell Miller? Is it there? That's what you have to ask yourself. At the moment, it's probably not. But as we know, because of the depth of the pool of fighters, the top guys are going to run out. They're going to run out of opposition fairly shortly. So these fights are probably going to happen in the back end of 2018. So let's move on to the top 5. Now, again, I've got 2 guys who, for me, interchangeable as 4th and 5th. But again, I've gone with the person in 5th who's probably lacked the opposition in recent years. Kubrat Pulev, someone I really, really rate. I think he's one of the skillfulest boxers in the division. Very, very capable. But he just hasn't had the opposition. Really hasn't had the opposition. I mean, you're talking about one fight in 2017, and that was a distance victory, went the decision over Kevin Johnson. I mean, most people expected it. Previous to that, he fought Sam Peter. He hasn't really stepped up. He hasn't stepped up. In previous year, he had a fight against Chisora, and Chisora made it very, very tough for him. Very, very tough for him. I mean, he edged it, but he made it. He made it tough. I mean, and this is the problem. Kubrat Pulev did have a title opportunity against Anthony Joshua just a couple of months ago, but pulled out with injury. It's a shame that we didn't get to see that, because I think it would have been an intriguing fight against Anthony Joshua. I definitely think it would have been intriguing. And most people would say that Joshua would have won, and then Kubrat Pulev would have fallen all the way down the rankings. But I mean, because he didn't have that Anthony Joshua, that's why he keeps his rankings. And I think he would cause problems for pretty much everyone else in the division. So there you go. So the other person I feel is kind of in this position, even though his record is significantly better, Alexander Povetkin. Alexander Povetkin does not make the top 3 for me. Does not make the top 3. He's got the best CV in the heavyweight division. He's fought elite fighters. He's lost to Klitschko, but he has beaten, stopped, and made a mockery of some top fighters who have previously been top 10, who are currently top 20 and top 30. Guys that have called it a day after being schooled by Alexander Povetkin. But again, drugs failures. 2016, there was a number of fights that he was meant to have Stefan and Wilder. These didn't happen. Drugs failures. Disappointment. Really, there were fights that everyone wanted to see. Everyone wanted to see Alexander Povetkin versus Deontay Wilder. It was going to be the biggest fight of 2016. It just didn't happen. Everyone was disappointed by that. We've gone into 2017, and he's had 2 fights against Rudenko and Hammer. They've both gone the decision. Up until then, he was taking better fighters than Rudenko and Hammer, and he was boxing their faces off and then stopping them. He went the distance with Rudenko and Hammer. So a lot of people will be saying he's done his finish. He is done and he is finished. He's fading out. But the thing is, he hasn't lost. He hasn't lost, and these Hammer, Rudenko, top 30 level guys, reasonable guys. They've beaten and stopped other top 30 guys. So you've got to give him the respect. We have to see where he goes. I mean, a lot of people are saying that Povetkin will now, off the back of these 2 wins, he's going to be in position to fight for one of the world titles. I don't think Wilder will touch him, but it would not surprise me if we see Anthony Joshua versus Povetkin in 2018 off the back of what has just happened. Okay, So we're moving into the top three, but let's just have a little bit of a really quick discussion. David Haye hasn't made the top 10. David Haye hasn't made the top 10, and neither has Tony Bellew. I mean, I've always been a big fan of David Haye, but that fight, he was half the fighter he once was. He got injured, and we have to see what happens with the rematch. Tony Bellew, for me, he beat an injured fighter, and it wasn't that he injured the opponent and then was able to stop him. It was a freak injury, and Tony Bellew was able to kind of just about get the victory, if I'm honest. So neither of them, for me, in the top 10. We've got people like Lucas Brown. I decided not to include him. Hasn't really, let's be honest, he hasn't fought since he won the title. All those drugs test issues and the time off. He had one fight sometime this year against a extremely low level opponent in a very small venue. I mean, I'm kind of just ignoring that. We need to see him in his next fight to see whether he is the fighter that beat Chagiev. We just have to wait and see. As simple as that, okay? Hughie Fury, he lost this year, but probably the biggest prospect outside of the top 10. I mean, as I spoke about right at the beginning, there are a load of fighters that are just treading water in the top 20 or 30. It's why I didn't really want to do a top 20 or top 30. But there are so many guys that have they're fading away, they're treading water, they're kind of looking for a little bit of a payday. They never have made it. They've lost when they've had their opportunities. They haven't put up a fight, and there's guys that are never going to make it. Okay, so there's a lot of around this division. So let's just jump across to the top three. Top three, number 3. No surprise here. We're going with Joseph Parker. 2 fights in 2017. One was against Cajano. I can't quite remember why I fought this guy now. I mean, was it I think it was a late replacement or something or other. And he fought his sparring partner or something. And that's what it was. And for me, I think it was probably the most disgraceful fight of 2017 in the heavyweight division, because they just played it out to effectively, Parker won, but they played it out so that his sparring partner wouldn't be brutally beaten. So they just played it out in a very kind of playful decision victory for Parker. Really disappointing. It doesn't matter. He should have gone and tried to beat him and tried to impress him. Because he didn't, it's another fight off the back of the Andy Ruiz fight, which was close. The Carlos Takam fight, which was close. The DQ win against Dimitrenko. Or the stoppage victory over Dredenko, which in my opinion should have been a DQ. But, you know, there's just not enough happening for Parker. He's got his title, he's retained it. He's then gone in against Hughie Fury, and I think he deserved the victory. Some people said Hughie Fury win. For me, he just edged it. Hughie Fury didn't do enough to win that. I mean, so that was a reasonable victory because Hughie Fury is a very good prospect. So he hits that top 3, but we have to see what he does. We're talking about Anthony Joshua next year, potentially. I mean, it hasn't been confirmed. That would be an interesting fight. So, number 2. We know where this is going. And for the first time in my ranking system, we've got a change at the top. Number 2, Deontay Wilder. Now, Deontay Wilder has 2 KO victories in 2017 against Gerald Washington and his repeat fight against Stefan. Again, lack of credible opposition, not really stepping up. There's always been the problem with Deontay Wilder that he's really not stepped up. When he won the title, the vacant title against Stefan the first time, good victory. Stefan was probably at his peak then, and he managed to edge out the victory. He's then gone on to defend his title against top 25-ish guys and not really hitting the elite. He's been scheduled to fight some elite guys. It's not happened. He's then gone in and fought Gerald Washington. And Gerald Washington boxed quite well before being stopped. Stavern completely out of shape, let himself down, to be perfectly frank. So that's why Wilder drops down. So we all know where this is going. We know who's number one in this ranking. It's Big Anthony Joshua. 2 fights in 2017. The unification fight with the great Vladimir Klitschko. For me, it was the only notable fight. It was the standout fight. It's the only fight in the heavyweight division in 2017 that in years to come people will remember, because it was a battle of the titans, 2 elite fighters, 2 natural super heavyweights, 2 fighters with power and 2 fighters that can box. We saw both guys hit the canvas. We saw both of them get up. We saw some decent boxing. It was exciting, and we saw the stoppage at the end, and it kind of crowned Anthony Joshua as the best at the moment. The passing of the torch from Klitschko to Joshua, and we later found out that Klitschko decided to call it a day. So it was a great fight, and that's why Joshua gets that level. He was meant to be fighting Kubrat Pulev, never happened, and he fought a late notice Carlos Takam, who gave a good performance despite Joshua winning. I mean, he caused some problems for Joshua, but then you got to expect that. I mean, Carlos Takam's a completely different fighter to Kubrat Pulev. The whole training camp would have been towards Pulev, but he still managed to do the job. So that's it. That's the heavyweight rankings for 2018. As I say, it's a weaker year. It hasn't been a vintage year in terms of the fights that we've seen. There's been a lot of out of the ring politics. And we've seen a lot of fighters fizzle out, and the division has weakened. And we're moving into 2018, and we've got these champions in Anthony Joshua, Joseph Parker, Deontay Wilder. But as I said at the beginning, we've got that shadow over the division. We have got Tyson Fury, and you have to really consider, can he be the same fighter that he once was? Was it a one-off against Klitschko? Did Klitschko significantly underestimate him? Can Tyson Fury do what he did to Klitschko against the likes of Deontay Wilder, against the likes of Anthony Joshua? Time will tell. But I think in 2018, there's going to be a couple of decent fights in the offing. And we've got a lot of decent heavyweights that could make a run for the top 5. And we've also got a couple of really young prospects that are starting to come through, that have shown promise. And maybe in a year's time, they'll be on the periphery of the top 15, and we'll have to see where that goes. So that's the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've got any comments, jump down to the comment section below. I would love to hear from you, and I'll see you in the new year.